Imagine walking down a street in a quiet, older American suburb where the trees have grown so tall they form a canopy over the road, and the houses seem to whisper stories of a time when life moved at a slower, more intentional pace. You pass by structures that feel like characters in a novel, each one boasting intricate details that we simply do not see in the cookie-cutter developments of the modern age. These aren't just buildings. They are physical manifestations of the American dream as it evolved across centuries, reflecting the hopes, fears, and aesthetic values of our ancestors. Yet, these architectural gems are vanishing. They are being torn down, neglected, or simply forgotten, replaced by beige boxes that prioritize efficiency over soul. Today, we're going to explore 10 distinct American house styles that are no longer built today, diving into the craftsmanship that defined an era and the reasons why these homes, once the pride of the neighborhood, have been left in the dust of history. You absolutely must stay until the very end, because the final style on our list didn't just go out of fashion, it disappeared for a truly surprising and somewhat tragic reason that changed the way we think about the American landscape forever. Our journey begins with the Grand Saltbox House, a style that emerged in New England during the late 17th century. Named for its resemblance to the wooden boxes used to store salt in colonial kitchens, the salt box is defined by its long, low roofline that slopes down to the back of the house, creating an asymmetrical silhouette that is instantly recognizable. These homes were born out of necessity and a clever tax loophole. In colonial times, the British government taxed homes based on the number of stories they had, but a sloping roof meant the back of the house was technically only one story, allowing families to expand their living space without triggering higher taxes. Inside, you would find a massive central chimney that acted as the heart of the home, radiating heat into every room during those brutal winters. The construction was heavy timber frame, often using local oak or pine, held together by wooden pegs rather than metal nails, which were incredibly expensive at the time. Families lived in these homes with a sense of communal intimacy, often gathering around the hearth for warmth and light, as electricity was centuries away. They stopped being built because as the colonies grew into a nation, the need for tax evasion faded, and the desire for symmetrical, formal architecture, like the Georgian style, took over the cultural imagination. Moving forward in time, we arrive at the Foursquare, a style that dominated the American landscape between 1890 and 1930. The American Foursquare was the ultimate response to the Victorian era's excessive ornamentation. People were tired of dusting complex gingerbread trim and cleaning hard-to-reach nooks. They wanted something sturdy, simple, and functional. As the name suggests, the floor plan was a perfect square, typically divided into 4 rooms on the main floor: a living room, a dining room, a kitchen, and a small den or library. Upstairs, you would find 4 bedrooms, one in each corner, often with a central hallway. These homes were famous for their large, welcoming front porches, which served as the outdoor living room of the family. It was where neighbors would chat, where lemonade was sipped on humid July evenings, and where the community felt truly connected. They were built with high-quality lumber and often featured built-in cabinetry, leaded glass windows, and oak woodwork that would cost a fortune to replicate today. The Foursquare fell out of favor because the rise of the automobile changed the way we accessed our homes. People began to demand garages attached to the house, and the boxy, compact design of the Foursquare made it difficult to integrate a garage without ruining its clean, balanced aesthetic. Then there is the Octagon house, perhaps the most eccentric style in American history. Popularized in the mid-1800s by an amateur architect named Orson Squire Fowler, these homes were based on the idea that the octagon was the most efficient shape for a house, providing more interior space for the amount of wall surface used compared to a square. Fowler believed that these homes were healthier, claiming that the circular flow of air and light prevented disease and promoted longevity. Imagine living in a home where every room has a unique angle, creating a sense of movement and discovery as you walk through the space. They were often built with poured concrete, a revolutionary material at the time, and featured wraparound porches that allowed for panoramic views of the surrounding farmland. Despite the logic behind them, they were notoriously difficult to furnish. Modern mass-produced furniture is designed for right angles, and placing a rectangular bed or a long sofa against an angled wall creates awkward gaps and wasted space. As the Industrial Revolution standardized building materials for rectangular frames, the octagon house became a relic of a failed experiment in utopian living. As we move into the early 20th century, we encounter the Craftsman bungalow, a style that celebrated the beauty of the handmade. Heavily influenced by the arts and crafts movement, these homes were a direct protest against the impersonal nature of the industrial age. You can spot a true craftsman by its low-pitched roof with wide, overhanging eaves, exposed rafters, and decorative brackets. The interiors were masterpieces of woodwork, featuring built-in buffets, bookcases, and cozy fireplaces surrounded by hand-fired ceramic tiles. These homes were designed for the middle class, offering a sense of luxury through quality materials rather than sheer size. Families lived in these homes with a focus on harmony with nature, often using earthy color palettes and plenty of natural light. However, the rise of post-World War II mass production demanded speed and low costs. The intricate woodwork, the custom-cut rafters, and the labor-intensive stone masonry of a Craftsman bungalow simply could not keep up with the demand for millions of new homes for returning soldiers. We transitioned from building homes that lasted a century to building homes that were meant to be replaced in 50 years. Before we continue, if you own a construction business, handyman company, remodeling business, or any home service company, there's a tool that can save you hours every week. With invoice1pro.net, you can manage your entire business in one place. Create professional estimates and invoices, keep track of your accounting, manage customers, schedule jobs, send reminders, follow up with clients automatically, organize your employees, and much more. Instead of using multiple apps, everything is inside invoice1pro.net. Now, let's continue exploring these incredible American homes from the past. The fifth style on our list is the Gothic Revival cottage. Walking up to one of these feels like stepping into a fairy tale. Popularized in the mid-1800s by pattern books, these homes were characterized by steep gables, pointed arches, and gingerbread trim that looked like lace carved out of wood. These houses were meant to look vertical, reaching toward the heavens, which was a deliberate choice to contrast with the flat, horizontal plains of the American landscape. The floor plans were often irregular and whimsical, with small, cozy rooms and bay windows that invited the outside in. They were built for families who valued beauty and romance over pure utility. They stopped being built because the Victorian era's obsession with complexity eventually collapsed under its own weight. People grew weary of the constant maintenance required to keep all that exterior trim painted and free of rot. The world was moving toward the streamlined, efficient, and modern, and the Gothic Revival cottage was deemed too fussy for a society that was rapidly accelerating. Next, we look at the Dutch Colonial, famous for its iconic gambrel roof. The gambrel roof, which has two slopes on each side, allowed for a spacious second-story living area without the need for a full second-story wall. This was a brilliant architectural trick that maximized head height in the bedrooms while keeping the overall footprint of the house relatively modest. These homes were built with thick stone or brick walls, small windows to conserve heat, and often featured a Dutch door, which was split horizontally so the top half could be opened to let in air, while the bottom half kept animals out or children safe inside. They were the epitome of stability and security. As building codes evolved and suburban sprawl took over, the gambrel roof became a niche design element rather than a standard. Modern zoning laws often prioritize uniform roof heights and specific setback requirements, making the unique profile of the Dutch colonial difficult to fit into modern residential planning. The seventh style is the shingle style, which emerged in the late 19th century as a uniquely American interpretation of Queen Anne architecture. These homes are covered almost entirely in wood shingles, which were left to weather to a soft, silvery gray, allowing the house to blend seamlessly into its coastal environment. They were sprawling, informal, and designed for relaxation. Large, wraparound porches were standard, and the interiors featured open floor plans that were far ahead of their time, focusing on views of the ocean or the forest. Unlike the rigid Victorian homes, the shingle style felt organic, as if it had grown out of the landscape itself. They stopped being built because they were expensive to construct and required constant maintenance to keep the shingles from warping or rotting in damp climates. Today, they are mostly relegated to the homes of the ultra-wealthy in places like the Hamptons or Cape Cod, far removed from the everyday American suburb. Eighth on our list is the Adobe Pueblo Revival. While still common in the Southwest, this style was once a major architectural movement across the country in the early 1900s, reflecting a fascination with the indigenous roots of the American continent. These homes featured thick walls made of adobe or stucco, flat roofs with protruding wooden beams called vigas, and rounded, soft edges that stood in stark contrast to the sharp, angular lines of Eastern architecture. They were incredibly efficient at regulating temperature, keeping the interior cool during the day and retaining heat at night. However, as the construction industry moved towards standardized framing and drywall, the art of working with earth and thick masonry became a lost skill. The cost of labor to create these handcrafted, thick-walled structures became prohibitive compared to the speed of wood frame construction. Ninth is the Prairie School style, championed by Frank Lloyd Wright. These homes were the ultimate expression of the American landscape, designed to hug the ground and emphasize horizontal lines. They featured massive overhanging roofs, bands of casement windows, and a complete lack of unnecessary ornamentation. The interior was meant to flow as one continuous space, blurring the lines between rooms. It was a revolutionary way of living that prioritized openness and connection to the garden. Yet, the prairie style was difficult to build on small, narrow city lots. It required large plots of land to truly appreciate the horizontal majesty of the design. As the population moved into dense suburban developments, the prairie house, with its need for space and custom craftsmanship, simply couldn't compete with the compact efficiency of the ranch or the split level. Finally, we arrive at the 10th style, the lustron house. This is the one that disappeared for a truly surprising reason. Following World War II, America faced a massive housing shortage. The solution, or so it seemed, was the lustron house, a home made entirely of porcelain enameled steel. These houses were prefabricated in a factory, loaded onto a truck, and assembled on a concrete slab in a matter of days. They were fireproof, termite-proof, and you could clean the walls with a damp cloth. They were the future of American living, a vision of a space-age, low-maintenance paradise. So why don't we live in them today? The company behind the lustron house went bankrupt in 1950, not because the houses were bad, but because of a perfect storm of political lobbying and logistics. The traditional building industry, terrified of losing their market share to prefab steel, lobbied against the company, and the government, which had provided the initial loans, pulled the plug. It was a tragedy of corporate and political interference that killed an innovation that could have solved the housing crisis decades ago. When we look back at these 10 styles, we see more than just wood, brick, and steel. We see the evolution of the American spirit. The salt box speaks of our colonial endurance, the foursquare of our desire for community, and the lustron house of our lost technological optimism. Modern houses, while comfortable and energy efficient, often lack the character and the human touch that these older styles possessed. We have traded craftsmanship for speed, and in doing so, we have lost a part of our history. Preserving these homes is not just about keeping old buildings standing. It is about keeping our stories alive. Each house is a record of how our ancestors lived, what they valued, and how they saw their place in the world. When we tear them down to build something generic, we erase a chapter of our collective biography. If you enjoyed learning about forgotten America, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and let us know in the comments which historic house style you would love to live in.